Dual Monday Nighters again in week 7. The Ravens thump the Buccaneers. Some major injury problems around the NFL, including those Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Rough time for them right now at 4-3. Cards over the Chargers. And we try to get to the bottom of which teams are contenders and which teams are pretenders in 2024 right now.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Love our everydayers and appreciate all the new listeners as well. Joining us daily here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Let's start in Tampa, where the Baltimore Ravens went in to Tampa and really put a beating on the Buccaneers. And 41-31 was the final score. It wasn't that close. There was some late garbage time points from the Buccaneers. They were trying to come back in this one, and I think we got to start with the gruesome injuries here, or the gruesome injury, but the other devastating injury for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is the Mike Evans hamstring. So the Mike Evans hamstring is unfortunate. He was already injured coming into the game, already caught a touchdown pass in this game, and joins a handful of Hall of Fame players with 100 touchdowns now in his career. Just the model of consistency, a phenomenal football player. And then their other really good wide receiver in Chris Godwin, who has already come back from major injuries in the past, just has a devastating one. And we don't know exactly what the prognosis is on that, but it's a season ender. Clearly it looks like for Chris Godwin, and the type of person he is and the type of player he is and how respected Chris Godwin is for the Buccaneers. I don't know if that's something you can overcome, missing both of those guys at the same time for Baker Mayfield. And I don't know if you saw this, Matt, but Chris Godwin, when he's on the cart, he's got the air cast on his leg, he's getting carted off, and he mouths something like, well, back to work. As in, like, well, here we go again. I'm going to hit this rehab hard. Just like insane what must be going through a player's head at that moment for his mind to be like, okay, here's a hurdle that I got.
Grind it out.
It was really unbelievable. And, you feel for Chris Godwin, and rough for the Buccaneers here after a Monday Night Football loss as well. And they fall to 4-3.
Yeah. And we can get in the game here in a minute, but that's going to be really hard to overcome. I mean, cluster injuries, the same position, is something general managers, front office, coaches can't really prepare for. They'll say things like next man up and all that good stuff, but deep down they know that it's something you can't overcome.
Yeah.
Godwin was having a great year, and he's a free agent after the year. I mean, I'm just thinking about the players' futures. That really hurts his situation. Evans, I have to think both these guys are out for the year. I'm just operating under that assumption because the way that Evans reacted with that hamstring, and he was ruled out immediately. It was not a minor strain or anything like that. I immediately thought, his great career going to end on 100 touchdown receptions? Might we see the last of Evans? His streak of 1,000-yard seasons is clearly over, and at his age, is it worth rehabbing to get back on the field and maybe not being the same? And then big picture for the Bucs, I think it sinks the pirate ship, to be honest with you.
There's still a 4-3 team.
They
have some other talented players on the football team, but watching that Monday Night Football game, and it was close early, and it just really felt like the Ravens were so much better and just kind of leaned on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right there. And when you start talking about contenders and pretenders, which we will a little bit later in this episode, it's clear that Baltimore Ravens are in a different class of football team right now than a lot of teams in the NFL. And, they've lost a couple of games, so they haven't been perfect this year, but man, Derrick Henry, 170 yards on only 15 carries. And he almost had a lot more, but he was just stepped out of bounds on another long run. Lamar having another MVP caliber season, not quite perfect quarterback rating, but close, 158.1. And I believe 158.3 is perfect. So he was 0.2 off of having a perfect passer rating. 5 touchdown passes. Some great throws. I mean, the way the Ravens right now are operating is kind of scary. And we talked about the Lions. Are they the best team in the NFL? Lions, Ravens feel like the 2 best teams in the NFL after 7 weeks.
Yeah, I think the Ravens are number 1 if I were to do a power ranks. And I know the Chiefs are undefeated and always find a way to win, but they don't feel as juggernaut-like as the Ravens. And I give the Bucs credit. They started hot. That place was loud. It was revved up for Monday Night Football. The Ravens were kind of on the ropes for the first, round or 2, to use a boxing analogy. But the announcers kept saying, why aren't they using Derrick Henry? I mean, like the first quarter or so, I think he had 1 touch, give or take. But then you look at the end of the day, 508 yards from scrimmage, 9.4 yards per play. I mean, every time you snap a ball, you basically get a first down. I mean, that is juggernaut-like for sure. And Lamar would be my MVP yet again if we gave it up right now. I mean, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. I mean, that's unbelievable. Another 52 yards, but
4 different receivers on the touchdowns. Welcome back,
yeah.
Mark Andrews, to the fantasy football world. By the way, there's a lot of fantasy football players have been waiting for that from Mark Andrews. 5 touchdowns to 4 different players. 8 different receivers caught passes. 9 were targeted. There was 1 target for Patrick Ricard, the fullback, that was not caught. So spreading the ball around. There's no number 1 there. 3 different tight ends catching passes. So yeah, I mean, and Lamar's just operating on a super high level right now. And the defense come together for those Baltimore Ravens. I think that was what was a little weird to start the year.
Yeah, I want to keep an eye on the Humphrey injury. He left this game, but you kind of mentioned it. It looks like Mark Andrews is rounding into shape. He's starting to look like himself. They've gotten more than enough out of Rashad Bateman. The offensive line really worried me, coming into the year, and it looks like they've got most of that figured out. It's not great, but it's good enough considering you got Henry and Jackson and all these weapons. So, yeah, they're in a really good spot right now at 5-2.
Still work. Clearly, the left side of that Ravens line better than the right side of that Ravens line. And they're counting on a rookie starting right tackle, which can be rough, and he was beaten in this game. But that's something that you think can get better. You're a highly drafted player.
Good enough.
And so holding his head above water there, Roger Rosengarten at right tackle, despite some losses. But yeah, so huge win for the Baltimore Ravens. They look like a juggernaut right now. You have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that are now missing potentially 2 stars on the offense at 4-3. We're going to have to talk about them as contenders and pretenders. Did they go from one category to the other? And the other Monday nighter, I don't know if we need to spend a ton of time on an ugly score in an ugly type of a game, and 2 teams that again, contenders or pretenders here with the Cardinals and the Los Angeles Chargers. 17-15 in this one. So the Cardinals are a team that we've talked about, and we kind of have them like I really feel good about knowing who the Cardinals are.
Mm-hmm.
And Kyler Murray is a player that can make some plays. He's going to have some ups. He's going to have some downs. I like the offensive line. They've got enough weapons, especially running the football when James Conner's working, and he was in this one, 100 yards on the ground, 101 yards on the ground on 19 carries. And Marvin Harrison Jr., a few catches. You throw it a few times to your tight ends and your running backs out of the backfield. Not huge production on the outside for the Arizona Cardinals, but the defense was good enough against an offense that's not going to be an offense that's really putting tons of points on the board anyway in Jim Harbaugh's Chargers offense. But Justin Herbert putting up the yardage, not so much the points in this one. 349 yards passing for Justin Herbert and the Chargers, but they weren't able to put the ball in the end zone.
Yeah, and I thought this was a pretty evenly played game. If they played 100, it might be 50-50 or 52-48, something like that. You mentioned Conner. I thought he was kind of the star of the show. I would have definitely liked to see more from Marvin Harrison Jr. Sometimes he just kind of disappears, and he had some really bad body language in this game. But Conner was inspirational in a way. I mean, he was really revving everybody up, and they kept raving about him as a leader. And I also think
150 yards of their
yeah
offense was most of their offense.
was Connor. Yeah, I also thought, and I've said this really for 2 years, that the Cardinals really don't have much talent on defense, but they get the most out of it. I mean, I think they're a well-coached group. Maybe if they can get 3 or 4 more pieces next offseason, that can become a top 10 type defense. I mean, because the coaching and they play super hard. I thought this was Herbert's best game. I thought he looked great back there, and but they didn't have their identity. They couldn't run the ball, and LA is all about running the ball, and they couldn't do it.
That's key. You're gonna go play the Chargers. You're gonna try to stop the run, and if you're successful, you're gonna have a successful night. And the Cardinals were successful, 17-15 win. We'll answer the question: Chargers, Cardinals, are they contenders or pretenders? And go through the rest of the league and let's see if we can figure this thing out after 7 weeks of NFL football. Next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, and a special offer for our listeners on FanDuel right now. You can start off with a huge return on FanDuel with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. All you got to do is sign up at FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet, get $200 extra to play with in bonus bets at FanDuel. And, there's a lot more to just making the bets at FanDuel.com, although you can find all the NFL bets you could shake a stick at. And we're talking weekly lines, tons of prop bets, in-game bets, NFL futures, who's going to win the Super Bowl. There's going to be some draft props popping up pretty soon here on FanDuel as well. And, of course, World Series getting going, every other sport. You can find it all at FanDuel. But when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you're watching football and you think, I'm going to go check out the latest stats, view some live play-by-play and so much more. Well, you can find all that on the same website that you're placing your bets as well at FanDuel.com. So go to FanDuel.com or download the app to get America's #1 sports book and get $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. The next segment is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn knows small businesses are wearing so many hats, might not have all the time and resources to hire, so they're constantly finding ways to make the process easier, including helping you write job descriptions. So post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So, contenders or pretenders around the NFL? Let's start with those Cardinals and Chargers that we just saw on Monday Night Football. These two teams are clearly fairly evenly matched. We've got the 3-3 Chargers and now the 3-4 Cardinals. So these are teams that are in the hunt and are a game out of being very, very in the hunt any given week. And they've kind of had a step forward, step back, a step forward, maybe a couple steps back. They're that kind of team. And clearly, I think if you played this game 100 times, it's 51-49. That's the feeling you get here. And I tend to think maybe the Chargers would win the bigger percentage of it. But that wasn't the case here. In the Cardinals kind of Chargers the Chargers in this one. But the question becomes, okay, well, can these 3-win teams beat the 4-win teams? And can the 3-win teams beat the 5-win teams? And you have to be able to, on a good day, still beat a good team if you are a contender. Is that what the Chargers and or Cardinals are, Matt?
Start with the Chargers, I guess. I think that this is a successful year in that you're playing Harbaugh football. You had to take some lumps in terms of cap stuff with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, etc. And that looks like it's a lot better next year. You couldn't really add anything all, free agency period. They really feel, I mentioned, I think the Cardinals need, several new starters for sure on defense, and then that could be a top unit. I really think the Chargers, I like McConkey, but definitely are at least a receiver short in terms of skill position guys. But I look at the AFC and think, are the Chargers one of the best 7? Probably, but they just scream a 7 seed, one and done, can't beat division leading type teams. You know what I mean? Like I think you said that a couple times about this team. They beat the bad teams, they lose the good teams, you know?
That's exactly what they are.
Yeah.
Is that a contender for you?
No. I mean,
No.
contender's a big word. Like, there's probably 8 contenders.
Working on that really quick here too. So a contender isn't someone contending for the 7th wild card spot. A contender is someone who is going to win a playoff game. Is that a contender?
Yeah, I mean,
Contender
some of these teams that could,
Bowl?
like, I'm sure we'll bring up Cincinnati. Like, Cincinnati, in my opinion, could turn their season around and make noise in the playoffs. I mean, that still might mean you'll get eliminated in round 1, but are a frightening team or a good team. You know what I mean? They're clearly above the line, you know, above the Mendoza line, and maybe could go into a really good team and upset them in the playoffs. I can't see that for the Chargers.
So Chargers and Cardinals, both pretenders for you, man.
Yes, and I think the Chargers have a better chance to go to the playoffs of the two, just because I think the NFC is getting hairy. You know, I mean, the North is really good.
Let's stick with the AFC side. You brought up the Cincinnati Bengals at 3-4. They're a contender then for you?
I think so. I mean, I can write the story where they start stringing some wins together. Before you know it, they're above 500. The offense is one of the better ones in the league. Defense to me is still a struggle. I kind of feel like it's not their year. Like, I picked them to win the division, and I think I kind of outkicked my coverage there, but they could be, you know, that infamous team you don't want to play in the playoffs type team, you know?
Yeah. Can you go win like 7 out of 10 games and all of a sudden you're a 10-win team and you still have a couple more to play?
Yeah, and you're dangerous. I mean, I can envision that for the Bengals.
In fact, 7-10 would put them at the end of the season at a 10-7 record if they went 7-10 in the last 10 games of the year. We do have 10 left here for these teams that have played 7 games, 11 weeks left on the season. And the Pittsburgh Steelers at 5-2. You have to be a contender if you're 3 games over 500 at this point in the season, right?
I think so. I mean, I think the 4 division title leaders in the AFC and the Steelers are almost assured a playoff spot, you know, in the AFC right now. It would have to be a magnificent crumble for Houston, Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, and I'm going to lump the Steelers in there as the number 5 team not to make the playoffs. And I don't know that they could go into Kansas City and win or get to the AFC Championship game, but they could grind out a win or 2 in the postseason, I think.
And clearly the Ravens contenders, Browns contenders. You go to the AFC East. Clearly, the Bills are contenders. Patriots pretenders. They're not going anywhere this year. But I think it's really interesting with the other 2 teams, and
I think they might be the 2 most interesting teams.
Right,
Jets
the Dolphins and the Jets. And Tua's coming back now, and he doesn't want to wear the Guardian helmet. He's like, I appreciate the Dolphins for having my safety and best interest at heart, but he's acting like this is not a big deal at all. I'm good. We're gonna roll. And if that's the case, then the Miami Dolphins have looked like a completely different football team with Tua and not Tua in multiple seasons now. And so at 2-4, they're actually second place right now because the Jets are below them at 2-5 after this week's loss. Miami Dolphins, contender or pretender with Tua?
So looking at EPA, they're the worst offense in the league. Now, do any of us think that will be the case going forward? No. I think they could be one of the best, to be honest with you. I mean, assuming Tua's Tua and Waddle and Hill and Achane and all those weapons they have, I don't love that this happened to them early in the season, because early in the seasons when they put money in the bank before the weather hits and all that good stuff. And I think that's true for the Jets as well, that they might look back on this past weekend and say, crap, that was the one we let get away. You know, like the Jets now are on a 4-game losing streak, and the Steelers beat them pretty bad, but that looked like a winnable game. They were favored coming in. Miami just lost to Indianapolis. Like, if you could have put one more win in the bank before Tua returned and you were sitting at 3-3 right now, I'd be like, oh, I can write a story where Miami gets really dangerous. Now it's like, ooh, they have no room for error anymore. And that's even more true with the Jets.
I think you put it this way. We've talked about the Bucs already. The Bucs are at 4-3 and have banked some wins. But without Godwin and Miami getting Tua back, last week, Tampa would be a huge favorite over Miami. Right now, I would take Miami all day long over Tampa the rest of the year, but they've got a 2-game head start.
Yeah, like power ranks don't work this way. I mean, you always do power ranks with like how teams are right now. But if we were to forecast rest of the season power ranks, I would definitely have Miami over Tampa. And I'm shocked I'm saying that,
Does that make them a contender?
Potentially. I mean, again, they could be. Could they be that team that's?
You gotta get off the fence.
I mean, it's a weird term. I mean, if you say yes or no, like, are they better than the Chiefs and the Bills and the Ravens? No, but could they be the team that's consistently putting 30 to 40 on you and Hill's doing dances and your fantasy team loves it and the defense is good enough and they're a very dangerous team? I still think that's possible.
I think the Dolphins with Tua is a contender, and I think the Jets look like a disaster and are a pretender.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at with these two teams.
I think I trust Miami more to right the ship.
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
It doesn't. The vibes are bad. Everything just feels off and wrong with the New York Jets.
I know. It really, really does. I mean, too much change, sweeping.
3 games under 500 at 2-5. So they've got to win a lot of games, and they've got to leapfrog the Chargers, who we're not sure about, the Broncos, who I don't think we're sure about. I still think the Broncos are pretenders, but they're 3 right now.
Right. They're sitting pretty. They might sneak into the playoffs. One thing I want to throw out about Miami, though, their defense, unreportedly, hasn't been bad. It's probably been above average even, but the offense is just so hideous. They're always 3 and out. It's so dysfunctional without Tua. I can't believe that they couldn't generate a little bit of offense coming off a bye against a bad Colts defense. I mean, they still have Hill and Waddle and these guys. I mean,
how could they not get anything going? That is somewhat curious, and that does worry you quite a bit, even when Tua is back. Did that make that much? They have 70 points of offense this year. One of only 3 teams that have fewer than 100 points, and the other 2 teams that are under 100 are at 99 exactly. And those are the Patriots and the New York Giants, who are not juggernauts. Wow. And they have 29 more points on the season than the Miami Dolphins, by far the fewest points in the league on offense.
And like, Tua is a huge difference maker, of course, but is he John Unitas or Joe Montana? You know what I mean? Like, right. Yeah, I mean, this offense is so bad. Is he that much of an upgrade over the bad dudes they've been playing? I guess, but wow. Broncos shouldn't make that big a difference, is my point.
Right. No, I agree. It shouldn't. So that's concerning. More contenders, pretenders coming up here, especially on the NFC side of things. Some teams that really need to start showing something, and maybe some ships that have already sailed after 7 NFL weeks. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app right now and get a special offer. And we're always giving special offers to our listeners. How about $20 off your first ticket purchase with promo code LockedOnNFL? More on that. But GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. And if you're looking for tickets to an NFL game or a college football game or 60,000+ seats in a stadium, there's a lot to go through. So Game Time Picks makes that a lot easier. You can also find all your favorite concert tickets, comedy shows, theater events as well on Game Time Picks, and get fantastic savings on some last minute ticket deals as well. Views from your seat, panoramic, lowest price guarantee. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LockedOnNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LockedOnNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Broncos, Chargers, pretenders. So it's only the Chiefs in the West.
Mm-hmm.
Raiders clearly pretender.
Oh yeah.
And Jags at 2-5, pretender. Titans pretender at 1-5. Houston contender, but the Colts at 4-3 is the last AFC question I have.
Are they the most average team in the league?
They might be the Mendoza line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of mentioned the Bengals too, because I still have questions about the Bengals, especially defensively.
Me too.
But yeah, Bengals and Colts. Would you have on a neutral field the Bengals?
I like the Bengals have a much better chance to become a contender. I don't know if the Colts have a very high ceiling, and the quarterback situation is problematic. And I would imagine, does Richardson have the longest of leashes this year? I think the answer is yes.
He should, yeah.
Yeah, and that makes you not a contender to me.
Yeah, so I think a pretender for the Colts, even though they're above 500 right now and have a lead over some other teams. So I think now the question becomes, I think the Colts are the Mendoza line of the NFL.
Yeah.
And the Bengals are the Mendoza line of, are you better than the Bengals and you're a contender?
Right. Like I could see Miami being better than the Bengals. They're not now, but I could see that.
Let's move on to the NFC.
Super quick on the Colts. I mean, they're getting Jonathan Taylor back. They're getting DeForest Buckner back, both very soon. I still don't see a high ceiling, though.
The NFC, we already talked about the Cardinals in the NFC here. Pretender, correct?
Yeah.
Los Angeles
maybe
Rams,
not next year, right?
Not enough for the Rams to be a contender, so they're a pretender. The 49ers are 3-4 right now, and they're only 1-3 in the conference. So they've got work to do. If they don't win the division, they've got work to do in as far as tiebreakers and just getting a playoff spot, because I don't know if they're going to win any tiebreakers with the way they've lost all these conference games. The only conference game they've won is against the Seahawks, who's the team that they're only one game behind for winning that division. So Niners and Seahawks, contenders or pretenders at this point?
I'm going to give the Niners the benefit of the doubt and call them a very concerning contender. You know, like it just doesn't feel like their year. A lot of bad things to overcome, starting with McCaffrey, but certainly not ending with it. I mean, everyone thought they had the best skill position players in the league. Now is it bottom 10 as it's constructed right this minute? You know, like it's pretty rough. The strength of the team became a weakness.
They might be running out there next week with two guys who just got their first NFL receptions this past Sunday. Two rookies, Pearsall making his NFL debut, and he didn't even play in the preseason either. So I think the Niners are kind of in that Bengals zone of, you could see where
maybe sleeping giant,
and they've done it before where they weren't kind of stumbled a little bit, and all of a sudden you rattle off a whole bunch of wins, and you're in the NFC Championship game. So the 49ers are contenders, but they have some things they need to figure out. I think the Seahawks are contenders as well, especially when you get that,
I do too.
Line healthy.
Yep, I do too. It's very much recency bias, but I probably would pick the Seahawks to win the division going forward. I think they're in a better spot today, and I think the future looks brighter. Subject of change, of course. You know, I thought the same thing about the Bucs, and then they lose both receivers in the same game. But I do like Seattle's defense, playmakers. Gino's really good too.
Gino had an awesome week this week, but then
awesome
the same question last week when the Niners beat up on the Seahawks, it'd be the opposite. So this might be let's ask it again next week with the Seahawks and the Niners. But
that could be a week-to-week thing on those guys.
So NFC South, the Buccaneers have moved from contender to pretender for me without Evans and Godwin, with what I saw in football.
24 hours ago, I would have said contender.
Yes, same.
That's rough, man. Tough league.
Contender for the Falcons then at top that division?
I think they win it going away now, because the Saints are definitely not a contender, and the Panthers are probably the worst team in the league.
All contenders in the North, Matt?
What's that?
All contenders in the North?
Yes.
Lions, Vikings, Packers, Bears. All
Bears are, of course, the one I feel worst about.
Bears are 4-2. They're rolling right now.
4-2. One of the best defenses in the league.
Caleb Williams is only getting better.
I'm going Contenders in the North, sweeping Contenders. 3 of them are easy slam dunks.
Yeah.
Top tier teams. I'm going to go back to Atlanta super quick, though. I don't know. I'm going to have a hard time with Atlanta, Philly, and Dallas.
All
I guess
contenders in the
Washington,
North,
too.
no contenders in the South.
I'm leaning that way. But I think Atlanta's going to the playoffs almost no matter what.
I think I would have a hard time saying that the Bears are more of a contender than the Falcons.
I was about to say the same thing. You know, like, they're probably in better than the Colts, if that's the Mendoza line. You know what I mean? More
I think
they're
both. I would err on the side of they're both contenders. I think. Bears and Falcons.
I mean, could win a playoff game. Not win the Super Bowl this year, but they could win a playoff game and be good. String some wins together at the end of the year.
Last one here at the East, and the Commanders have proven that they have to be considered contenders with what they're doing, especially in the offensive side of the ball, putting up more points than anybody in the entire league.
Yeah.
They've put up 218 points. They put up 3 times more points on offense than the Miami Dolphins have in only 7 weeks. The Giants are not contenders at all. Those are pretenders.
No.
So Eagles, Cowboys.
I guess, yes. Recent history, a lot of wins over the last few years, but bad vibes. I'm not real happy where either one of these teams is at right now, to be honest with you.
Eagles, contender. Cowboys, pretender for me.
If I had to pick one, it would be the Eagles. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're sold on Washington.
No, I'm not sold on Washington, but they're as much of a contender as the Cowboys or the Bears or the Falcons to me right now.
More than, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they
how about versus Seattle or San Fran?
I think it would be so. I mean, the 49ers were just favored against the Chiefs. So I think the odds makers would still have the 49ers favored against the Commanders in a neutral field.
Yeah. I think you're right.
And by the way, it's Niners Cowboys this week. So
yeah, that could be bad news for Dallas.
Could be a statement for Dallas as well. End up 4-3. Niners would be 3-5 going into a bye week and licking wounds.
That's close to a loser leave town match.
It is. It's getting close for this early in the season. We're still in the first half.
I like San Fran's chances of winning their division if they lose that game better than Dallas's.
Absolutely. I would 100% agree with that. All right. What do you think? Contenders or pretenders? Did we get it right? At BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making this your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. For your second listen, check out Matt doing Locked On Dynasty and Locked On NFL once a week. The new Locked On NFL, by the way. And, of course, your team is covered right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're talking 200 pods in total at Locked On. And so we've got you covered every which way daily. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Matt and I back tomorrow. Get those mailbag questions in this week, by the way, as well, at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Drop a question in the YouTube comments. Matt and I back tomorrow. Peacock and Williamson.